What's up guys, Ryan here, and today I have an install that I'm doing for you guys that I'm really excited about. I've been waiting a long time to do an install like this. I've been fortunate enough to partner with a company that is a really great company, and I'm excited to work with them, and I'm excited to do this install for you guys today. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing the rear suspension on my bike. I'm going to be doing them with a suspension called Batubo. Batubo has actually been around for a lot longer than most of us know. They've been around since the 60s. They've been making motorcycle suspension since the 70s. And they've really, they've kind of gone all in the last few years, making some really top of the line suspension that's competing with all of the names out there that we're familiar with. We're maybe just a little bit unfamiliar with this company. Batubo is a company from Italy. They've got, like I said, a long history of making suspension. A lot of their history comes from race suspension, and it's really good stuff. I'm excited to show you guys the product. I'm excited to get to this install, and so the first thing we're going to do is just take a look, and I'll show you guys kind of the nuts and bolts of everything, so you get a good idea of what we're going to be putting on there. And yeah, let's get to it. All right, guys, so here's what we're looking at, the Batubo suspension. The first thing you notice is that this is different. The packaging is a lot different than what you're going to see from a lot of companies. It's obviously, you can see, Italian. So we're going to go ahead and take a look and see what we've got in here. So again, what you're looking at is the remote reservoir style shock. It has 3 separate adjustments. So it has your preload adjustment, and there's a dampening adjustment at the bottom, and the remote reservoir. They're conveniently labeled for you left and right, so that's kind of nice right away if you're questioning whether or not you're putting them on the right side. But if you're doing an install like this and you're working with this kind of suspension, you really should have some idea of what you're doing and what these adjustments do mean. One of the things that I do like about this that's different from other suspensions, and I'm kind of going to go in a little bit, so the dampening adjustment at the bottom that you're going to see actually says hard or soft. So it's kind of like, it lets you know if you're adjusting one way, it's going to make it it's going to make that rebound harder or softer. And that rebound is what they talk about, the speed that your shock is going back to its normal position. So yeah, that's what we're going to be working with today, is doing this install. So if you've seen other install videos, you're going to know that the actual install for these, there really is not a whole lot to these installs, right? These things are pretty easy. There's literally 2 bolts on one side, 2 bolts on the other, and then the canister kit, which is really not that big of a deal. So it makes the install for these pretty simple. You will need someone else to work with you, so you'll probably need a friend with you to adjust your sag in your shock, especially. Because you need to sit on your bike to adjust that, and you're going to need to take some measurements to do it. And so if you don't have somebody to do that, that's going to make that part of it quite a bit more difficult. So anyway, I just wanted to show you, I will actually hold these up to the stock shocks when we get closer to the install portion. So you can see there is a very significant difference between what these look like and what the stock shocks look like on the Harley Bagger. So we're going to get the bike set up. I have Bob with me again today, and we're going to get kind of everything peeled off the bike, because you don't really need to see that process. You already know that your bags have to come off, and everything basically needs to come off the back end of your bike. And then we'll get it on a center stand, so that we can get the back wheel a little bit off the ground and go from there. All right, so now we're here to do the actual install. We've got the bike on a center stand. Everything is lifted up. We have access to the shocks. You can see there's the top bolt, the bottom bolt. Pretty simple as far as just taking those off, 3/4 inch bolt to take those off top and bottom. And if you're going to do it this way with the back tire completely off the ground, it's suggested that you only do one side at a time, because otherwise, obviously, your back tire can drop down, or you can lower your bike so that your back tire is resting on the ground. the reason why you don't want your bike all the way down on the ground and you need it up on a center stand is that you've taken the compression out of the coil from just the weight of the bike. So that's going to make it the easiest to get off is when you've taken the compression out of it. If you have it on the ground, or if you were to take both sides off at one time, you're going to wind up with a lot more problems with your back tire off the ground. If you took both sides off, obviously your back tire is going to fall to the ground and nothing's going to line up correctly. So this is the easiest way to do it. You can lower it and put the back tire on the ground. We're going to just be doing one side at a time, so it's not going to be necessary for us to do to put the back tire on the ground right now. But we are going, and the other reason is because we're going to need a little bit of play in this because of the difference in shock length. And so we measured the shock length. The length of shocks that we're putting on are just a little bit longer than the stock shocks that are on here. And so these measure at 12-inch shocks. The ones that we're putting on are like 12.8. So they're a little bit longer. So we want to be able to move that if we need to. So we're going to go ahead and start taking this apart and go from there. The other thing that you'll see if you watch any videos on this is I have found conflicting information on the torque specs when you put this back together. So we're going to use 35 foot-pounds of torque on the top and the bottom, as that is what I've found that I think is probably going to be the most accurate torque spec. The other thing that I learned through kind of doing some research on this is that while they don't really say it, the truth of the matter is Harley has one active shock and one passive shock. This would be the only active shock because this is the only one that has a spot where you can set the dampening on it and the spring tension. And so this would be your active shock, and the other side would be considered a passive shock. So I found that to be a little bit interesting when I did that. So let's hold these up and show the difference between the two different styles of shock. Now this is the active side shock, so this is probably the one that would be considered the most robust. And there's your difference in your size. Obviously you can tell there's quite a bit of difference in length, and this shock is obviously going to be a lot more robust and just essentially a much better shock. So we're going to go ahead and continue with the install. So you can see it can be a little bit of a trial and error. We're going to take off the other side too, and we're actually going to lower the bike to put the tire on the ground so it doesn't drop on us, and that's going to allow us to then raise the bike and get everything adjusted as we need. So you need to hang on to that for me.
3/4 of an inch is a lot. I got the bike. Okay. Yep. That's good. Cause you're still on.
You want to do it? We want to get that compression out of that spring. See that?
Oh, yeah.
Right there, probably. So right now what we're doing is we're doing the same thing we did on the other side. We're taking the shock off, so taking both bolts out. And in that process, we dropped the bike back down to the ground. We lowered it. So the back tires is essentially touching right now. And then we are going to slowly raise it and do the shock one side at a time so that we get them lined up. We get all the holes and everything lined up with how it comes from the factory. So in the instructions, it says that these shocks are set. The preload is set on these with, I think it said 70 kilograms. So I think that they're set up, if I made the calculations right, it's set up for about a 150-pound rider is the idea. So, and give me that other shock. So this is what was essentially called the passive shock. And so this is the shock on the right side of the bike, and this being the passive shock, it does not have any setting for preload. So this is only handling those small like little bumps that you feel when you're going down the road. Essentially is what this is handling. So really, the Harley stock shocks are not doing anything for you.
You're gonna have to go up.
Okay. So let me know when you're ready.
Yep, I'm ready. Good. Come down just a little bit.
Come down a little bit.
Yeah, you're too high now.
Well, that's gonna be
Okay, you might have to come down,
Tricky.
go down and then go back up.
I came down a little bit.
Yep, now come back up. Hold up.
Right there.
Come up just us.
Hold up, tiny bit.
There, that's good. Okay. This is where that 2-person comes in.
Yeah, for sure. So this is where it gave you that the idea of having 2 people to do this, because you really do need the second person's hands to get everything lined up and to be able to line up your shocks and everything the way that you're supposed to. So it does state in the instructions that when you're looking at your shock, you want to make sure that this is straight up and down, that it's not tipped out this way or it's not tipped in towards the bike. And so you can eyeball it or we can check it by level. So since we have the bike in the position that we want and we have these, we're not torquing anything down yet. We have the bike in the position that we want. We're going to get the other one set up, and then we'll get the bike setting down so the tire's resting and we're not causing any compression. And then we'll torque all of these bolts down so that they are essentially torqued down and ready to go. All right, so once you have your shock in place, you're going to need to put on the bracket for the remote reservoir. So if you want to hand me that bracket, Bob, I can kind of show everybody what this looks like. So your bracket essentially looks like this. They aren't, determined by side, but it does need to go with this little arch. Essentially, you're going to take this bolt and this bolt out. These are both Torx T45, I believe is what we said. And then your bracket's going to go on like this with that part heading up so that your remote reservoir goes back there. So essentially that's how it goes on. So we're going to go ahead and get these installed. That piece goes on the inside. So it's going to go, it's going to go like this. It is a nice feature that this has the supplied hardware to do this install. Install for these is pretty straightforward. I mean, again, they're just 4 bolts. Just want to make sure that you put Loctite on there and make sure that you get them tightened down so nothing's going to go anywhere, because like everything else, we know that our Harleys are going to vibrate a little bit and we don't want anything to vibrate loose or to cause any troubles with us long term. And you are tightening just into machined aluminum, so you probably don't want to get too too crazy with torquing anything down. So yeah, and then there's some zip ties if you want to zip tie it, you know what I mean? Yep. Just to hold it kind of in place down there. So there you go. That's essentially what you're looking at for the adjustment with the canisters. So we'll go ahead and get the other side squared away, and once we do that, then we're going to show you guys what you need to do to adjust your sag in your suspension. So we'll go ahead. The next time you see us, we're going to have the bike down and we're going to get ready to set the sag. All right, so now we have to set the sag of the shocks. And so This part is actually one of the most crucial parts of setting up your shocks to make sure that you're really getting optimal performance out of this. And because these are Italian shocks, obviously everything is going to be measured in metric. So we made some simple conversions. And what they tell you, and I'm just following manufacturer's instructions, is that they want a static sag, so without any weight on the bike. So we're going to get the bike off and we're going to measure this. And then, so we're going to measure the shock and then we're going to put it down. So it's just the weight of the bike on the shock absorbers. And we want about a 1/2 inch, right? That was correct. About a 1/2 inch of what they call static sag. Okay, so we're going to make sure that this is set so that our preload is set, that this is about a 1/2 inch. And if it's set at a 1/2 inch, which coming from the factory, my understanding is that should actually be set correctly. So when we put it down, we should get about a 1/2 inch of sag. Then I will sit down on the bike and then you actually want to bounce a couple times so you get that kind of action in the shock. And then I'll just sit on it with my weight and we'll take another measurement. And what we're looking for at that point is we determined that the midway point in the millimeter measurements is about 1 inch. So we're going to go for 1 inch of sag with me sitting on the bike. Now, the thing about the preload that you have to always keep in mind is if you make adjustments to the weight of your bike, you should make an adjustment to your preload. Otherwise, you're not getting an optimal ride. And so, rule of thumb is that you want that to be 1 inch of sag. If you add weight to your bike, if you pack your bike down for traveling, if you have it fully loaded to go on a trip. So you should be learning how to make these adjustments from that point on. After that, all the rest of your adjustments are micro adjustments. So you can set your rebound and your compression. And so your rebound has, I believe on these are 5. Can you see over there, Bob? It's 5. So 5 on the rebound, and I believe there's 15 or 20 clicks on the top for your compression. And rule of thumb, and where I'm going to start is I'm going to start in the middle with my rebound and my compression, okay? And I'm going to ride around with everything kind of set in the middle for rebound and compression. And the reason why I'm going to do that is I want to see what kind of the midpoint range of this shock absorber is. And that will give me some idea of the more I ride, the more I'm going to get a feel for that, whether I want that rebound to be what they call hard or soft. And the nice thing about these shock absorbers is it's actually labeled right on the rebound and compression adjustments for hard and soft. So that has an H and an S. So if you want it more firm, you go H, more soft, you go S, kind of like that. And so the H and S, essentially hard and soft, means this, okay? A softer rebound is going to be a softer, when you go to the soft, it makes the rebound go slower, okay? So your bounce back to static position of your shock is going slower, okay? If you go harder, your shocks are going to be more firm. That rebound is going to go faster. So that is determined how, you determine that basically on how you ride and what your comfort level is through my reading of the documentation for these shocks and all the research I've done on all the other shock absorbers. From what I'm understanding and from what I have seen, stated everywhere, this is personal preference, okay? There is no hard and fast rule for what you should have, your micro adjustments for your compression or your rebound. This is all personal preference. You can go on any of the major manufacturers and that's what they're going to say. There's probably some adjustment points where they say this is, what most optimal riders or what riders are using or optimal performance, but that's why we're going to use that. So we're going to go from there. And so we're going to be raising and lowering the bike, and we'll be back to show you that in just a minute. All right, so we are going to essentially lift the bike up a little bit and get the back tire off of the ground.
Yep.
Okay. So this takes all the load off of the suspension. Go ahead and make that measurement. And you just need to make note of this measurement so that when you put the bike down, you'll see if you have that 1/2 inch of static sag. Now this process is going to be the same for both sides. So unlike your standard Harley shock, which only has an adjustment on one side, these are adjusted on both sides. So we will need to follow this process with this side and the other side. So it does seem kind of a lot right now, but what we're doing essentially is we're setting a baseline that should be the standard baseline that you should be able to hold from that point on, and then just be able to adjust that based on the weight of the bike and riders and everything that you have on there. Okay, so we have both shocks essentially set at the same height. So now we're going to lower the bike back down, and we're going to check static sag with the bike on the ground.
And there's your 1/2 inch.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right, so now we have a static sag measurement at 1/2 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and sit on the bike, and we will check the sag with me on it.
Should roughly be 1.5 inches.
Well, we don't know what my weight is going to do. Okay, there. I gave it 3 good pumps.
You're rated 1 inch.
Rated 1 inch.
Yep.
Okay, check the other side. So there you go. We set the static sag, and it just so happened with my weight on the bike, we were right where we need to be with the rider sag. So essentially at this point, your install here is done. Again, I would say that your adjustment is not complete because I set my rebound right in the middle. So there's 5 rebound adjustments. I set it at a 3 on both sides, and I didn't do anything with that compression adjustment. So I'm leaving those two the way that they are. And I'm just going to ride it around for a while and get some sort of a feeling of what I like, of whether or not I want a faster or slower rebound, which is that hard or soft measurement that I mentioned before. So there we go. That install is complete. All right. So there you go. It's really not that complicated. The install is not really that hard. But you do have to kind of know what you're doing a little bit, and there was some finessing that we had to do along the process. One of the things that we learned was when you have a different size shock, obviously, that you're putting on and taking off, you're going to need to move your bike up and down a little bit to make those adjustments. And so that was the part that we kind of had to finesse through. But at the end of the day, I've done much more difficult installs than doing this. The important thing, as I understand it, and as I've seen on all the other videos, is to set your sag. We, I think, kind of got lucky that my weight didn't adjust or make that adjustment too difficult at the end. We set the static sag at a 1/2 inch with the bike just sitting on itself with me on it. It went down about 1 inch. There's exact millimeter measurements in the instructions that you can use if you want. We made the conversion, to use what we are more familiar with. These shocks again are 12.8 inch shocks. There's a variety of sizes in these, but the 12.8 is what I put on mine, which is just a little bit larger, a little bit taller than the stock Harley shock. But once you've set your sag and they're installed, it's really, there's going to be no difference in the ride height whatsoever. Now I'm super tall, so that doesn't matter anyway. But so if you're looking for a good performance shock set, I'll do some reviews and probably more videos as I get further into using these and talk probably more about what I did to dial these in for the style of riding that I do. And you guys will get some good information on these shocks, since there's not a lot of stuff out there about them. But just so you know, and if there's any question, these are a premium brand shock that is comparable to all the other ones that you're going to see out there in the market. They're just as not well known right now. But I can tell you from what we did on the install and through feeling and touching and installing the product, the fit and finish is absolutely fantastic. These are a great shock. Everything about them is, it screams performance, and they have a long history in racing, Bitubo does. So that's all I have for you guys today. If you like what I'm doing, give me a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe video. I'll put a link to another video below, and I'll see you guys next time. I'm out.